This video is about the existing Node-RED dashboard and the existing Node-RED flows that are supplied with the machine. As you saw in some of the earlier videos, if the system is switched on and all connected, you'll get information on your dashboard. So what I'm going to do here is show you what goes or potentially can go wrong. So again, if you recall from a previous video, if everything was switched on, we'd have data appearing in these blocks for each particular machine. So I might just turn one machine on and see what happens. So simulated machine's on. Now bear in mind I've only turned on one of my simulated machines. As you can see, nothing much is shown on the summary chart. Why is that, you might ask? Well, that's one of the issues with the current setup. It's expecting two machines to be switched on. So let's switch on the second machine. So as we've switched them on, we've seen that it starts to pick up data. We have sim1 now called ABCD, and it's idle and busy, and that's working away, and then the other one is stopped after about 10 seconds or so. That's called FIAB, and that starts to show busy and idle. And after a few minutes, we'll start to see some shift information come up. And that's great. So that's really what we've got. Now, by the way, we are in a browser, so I can go Control plus and make that bigger. I go Control minus and make it smaller. And essentially fill the screen. But that's it. So that's where we are in our happy place. Now, I'd like to go back and show you what can happen, or what's happening behind the scenes, and why we needed both of those machines to be on. Later on, we'll want to not do that. So let's go back to the situation where we've only have one machine on. If I turn one off now, it won't. It's stored the data in that one, and it'll just sit there and leave the last indication that it was on. So let's go to the dashboard, sorry, the editor. Here we are in the editor, and we can see we have three flows, the test flow. So this is essentially setting up the system. So we have XBee's listening and receiving data. We have data input here, and we have the dashboard elements here. So machine 1 and machine 2. But there's this one interesting one in the middle here. This is save detected XBees. So what we have is some code where we set the XBees that send data to this edge computer, this device here, to global variables. And what that means is we don't have to pre-configure this for any XBees. We just let it pick up the first two detected XBees and add them to an array, and that's it. But that makes a problem for us. Let's see where that data is stored, and let's clear that information and then see what happens. So if we go to this context data, we can see that we have flow and global variables. We have a process. If we refresh that, we'll find that we have our XBees here, and here's the two XBees that it found in this array, and that happened in this function here. So what it did was it listened, and the first two that it got, it put them in this array. So I want to try and do this with just one in the array. So I'm going to put that in the bin. And this thing will work here. And there's only one working, so we saw that listening flash over. So if I refresh that, we'll now see that we only have A, B, C, D connected. Now if we go to the debug message, we should find that we start to find we have some errors appearing. Here we go, type error, cannot read property starts with undefined. And that is associated with this node here, which is to do with looking at getting the XBees from that global XBee flow, and looking at this, that one of those XBees is not configured. So it starts with undefined. So that's where we start to see these errors. Now this is the debugs area. Let's look at the dashboard. So I've only got one machine working, this remote 16. We should see some ones here. So every let's see, so that's its data object, the digital samples 1 0, this one down here, data object, digital samples 1 1. So I think that's stopped at the moment. These things have their alarms. We can acknowledge their alarms, we can start them again. So we should get another one at the bottom saying it's run. Most probably this one. Oops. 0. Here we go. So that was running. So that will be reading data. But of course, all of this region here, this debug region, is getting flooded with these messages because of this. We haven't got this other array or this other XBee actually enabled. So let's see what the effect of the dashboard is. So let's go to the dashboard. So the effect of that error is we still have that whole screen locked up. So let's pop the other one back on. As soon as we do that, then we're able to interact with the dashboard again. That's all well and good, but let's find some ways to fix that. Well, there's a number of ways we can do that. We can take note of those XBees on this particular board. We've got A, B, C, D, and we've got FABA, and we can hard code those, and we can simplify this flow. So let's look at doing that as a quick fix. By the way, the real fix is to put this back into the database that exists on this machine and to use the database. So that's something I'll show later on, but let's just try and fix this so we can potentially just use one of these simulated machines, and we can imagine that one of those simulated machines is physically connected to your real data. So how's a quick way of doing that? So let's go back to FIAB local. Let's go to the test flow. I can save these detected XBees. So we still want to create this. Oh, sorry, my mistake. We still want to create this object, this XBee flow variable. Oh, sorry, global variable, which is an array, and it's going to have members A, B, C, D, and FABA. But let's just write that in directly. So how would we potentially do that into a global variable? Well, the clue is in this existing function here. So right now, if it's not defined, we're going to make an array, and we're going to put some data in there. So perhaps we can use the existing script here. There are simpler ways of doing it actually, but let's just modify this one quickly and actually have that array. So what we might want to think of is that array here, this bit here, if it's not defined, we're going to make a new array, and we're going to actually in that array set the values we want, and perhaps we can do it with both of those from here. So looking at this, there's a sort involved in that. We don't need any of this second part. We're just going to create an array, and we're going to set it here. Now there's two ways we can do this. Let's try and do it in the shortest possible way. So perhaps we don't need any of this chunk of statements. We're going to just use, if it's not defined, we're going to actually just make it. So let's just, we can delete that, or we can actually comment these things out. Let's just comment them out. I'll just show you how to do that. We're just going to use the comment symbol. We'd like to comment a block out, but we'll just stick with this. We can see that as we've gone on here, there are some errors, and that was to do with the matching brackets. So now we've just got this. We can actually put the array in here. We can just write the type in, or we could even set it in here. So how about we just write it in one line here. So we're going to set, if it's not defined, we're going to set it here, and we're going to just define it directly in this line here. So it's two, oops, it's obviously fills in the brackets. It'll do the quotes as well. So we've got A, B, C, D. We put a comma, and then we've got the other one called FABA. So this is actually setting, or going to set a global variable if it hasn't got one, if it's not defined. Now we're also going to put this somewhere else as well. We're going to actually trigger this when we actually deploy the system. So we'll say if it's undefined, we're going to create it. So how do we do that? We'll say done for that. We don't have to keep checking. In fact, let's just take away this other one. We won't bother with the message types. We just want to define these two XBs. So let's just even get rid of that outer if statement here. So we're just going to say if the global variable is not set, we're going to make a new array, and we're going to set it to this value here, or this array of these two with these two elements. So done for that one. So literally we're just left with 1, 2, 3 lines and a return message. So done for that one. Listening and receiving data. Now that's fine, but we're going to save the detected XBs. We're going to actually break that little string there, and this connection here, we're going to move that out of the way. We're going to just move all this down. So that's what that's doing. XBee is listening and receiving data. And what we'll do here is we'll actually maybe put a debug message on that one, just to sort of see what comes out. But here we're going to have an inject node that's going to start at the very beginning, save XBees to global variable. So this timestamp thing, we're going to inject it once at the beginning, and then we're not going to repeat it. We don't care what that payload is. And potentially, look, we could even, if the payload could be a JSON-R2 expression, which I think it could be acceptable later on, we could actually do that potentially with the whole thing doing that change in the timestamp there. But let's just leave it like it is for now. So the little blue circles means it's not deployed. There is one other thing here. We still have this global variable here. Let's put it in the bin. We'll delete it, so it's now undefined, so that's going to be checked. And let's deploy this whole thing. So it's been deployed. We now have this timestamp that will occur once. And if we refresh the global variables, we'll find that, lo and behold, we've created an array with 2 XBs. Even though only, let's see, it's on the machines. We don't even need the machines running. So let's go to the dashboard, view the dashboard, and we'll see that we have our 2 machines, Sim 1, Sim 2, is in idle. And if we undo one, or turn one off, and go back to our first situation where we have only one powered on. Let's close a lot of these dashboards because I've obviously clicked on the dashboards. We don't need to keep doing that. We see that we have these XBs saved to a global variable. If we destroy that global variable again, we shall get some errors again. So let's put that in, let's destroy that one. Let's look at our debug message, and if we do this here, we'll find potentially we start to get some errors every 10 seconds. Here we go. So this is, these cannot read property 0 of undefined. They're similar problems in the update side or in this functions because we haven't got them defined. So if we go to here or anywhere and just move something around and we want to deploy it again, let's do a full deploy. We'll find that we've got rid of all our error messages. We'll find that our dashboard has at least some data coming in from one machine, even if the second machine is not actually turned on. So that's a quick fix for that problem of requiring both of the XBees to be plugged in.